Hello and welcome to a sunny book nook. I'm back in St. Louis, so I get to film in this setup that you guys really seem to like when I filmed here last time. So, I hope you enjoy. Today I am going to be giving you my 2021 top 20 favorite books. I've read, I think like 195 books so far this year. My Goodreads goal for this year was 200 books, so I'm doing pretty well. I'm almost there, and I think I can get it. Because I read so many, I think it's fair for me to make a 20 book list of rankings from 20 to 1. I think last year when I did my 2020 favorites, I didn't give a ranking. But this year, I do think I can do a ranking. So let's just get into it. I'm not talking about any of my honorable mentions right now, mostly because then this list would be even longer, and it's already, of course, 20 books long. So my 20th favorite book this year has got to be Yellow Jessamine by Caitlin Starling. This book is a novella, and it is a fantasy gothic horror type story following this woman who is a very powerful merchant, but that's because she is a widow and all the male members of her family are no longer alive, and she's from a powerful mercantile family within this city that is attempting to avoid getting folded into a larger empire. So there's kind of these political maneuvers at play, but there is this underlying gothic poisoned woman thing going on. There's a sapphic relationship in here. It's really gloomy. The anxiety builds throughout the story, and I think that the atmosphere was just so beautiful to me. I really deeply enjoyed this. And yeah, I love this a lot, so that's why it's on my favorites list. The 19th favorite book that I read this year. Oh, also, I wanted to preface by saying that a lot of these books I don't physically own because I love the library and I don't buy a lot of books because I already have such a large collection, anyways, so most of these books are not books that I physically own. They're just books that I checked out from the library or via a library app usually. So anyways, moving on to my 19th favorite book of this year, which I do physically own, Do You Dream of Terra 2 by Temi O. This book follows a group of elite students from a space academy in London who are all teenagers and being sent on this mission to this Earth on this other planet called Terra 2 because it's basically another version of Earth, and because they have to be young because the planetary travel distance is pretty extensive, and so they're going to be adults by the time they get to the planet. And we kind of see the complicated relationship between all of these characters, and there is something really traumatic that happens right before everyone boards this ship and right before this mission takes off. And I think this book was so tender but also absolutely brutal, and it incorporated this realistic sci-fi story, something that feels really grounded in reality. And it also reminds me of a couple other books and short stories I read this year that I also really enjoyed. It really reminded me of the Becky Chambers book, I'm forgetting the title, but I'll put it up. And also reminded me of a Ursula Le Guin short story, Vaster Than Empires, which those are both novellas and short stories that I really enjoyed. And this is obviously a thicker book, so I really love this. And yeah, that's my 19th favorite book of this year. Yeah, also this list is going to be wide variety of genres because, as you know, I read a lot of different genres, but most of these books are for an adult audience because usually my favorite books of the year end up being adult books as opposed to young adult or middle grade books, but I did read that. So I'm also going to have a video towards the beginning of 2022 that will do a sort of statistical wrap up and breakdown of all the books that I read in 2021 about genres, audience, authors of color, queer books, stuff like that, right? So my 18th favorite book of this year is The Night Always Comes by Willie Vlottin. This book is a realistic fiction, gritty novel following a young woman in Portland, Oregon, who is really struggling with her mental health and her family. Her dad left when she was younger, and so her single mom has been trying to, deal with that her whole life, and her younger brother is disabled, and so we follow her as she tries to take care of him. This book is very dialogue heavy. We see this really tense relationship between daughter and mother, because there's a lot of trauma going on there, but we also follow our main character through the course of this night where she is trying to secure a mortgage on this house, but then her mom backs out of it last minute. And so then she goes on this like wild goose chase. A bunch of like crimes go on. She gets involved with some like kind of seedy dealings. There's a lot of violence in this book. There's a lot of discussion of what it means to be poor in a city like Portland, what it means to live in a city that's so rapidly gentrifying, and to be a working class person with a lot of complex family issues and the struggles that entails. And it was absolutely gripping because it's so action-packed and dialogue heavy. It was just so like fast-paced. Like I wanted to know everything that was going to happen, and so I just like kept on barreling through. 18th favorite book on this list. My 17th favorite book on this list is Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. This book is a magical realism depressed woman novel, and it's following a mother who thinks she's becoming a dog, and all the things that entails. And we kind of explore the motherhood aspect of this a lot, because the reason why she feels like she's going crazy is because like her husband is so deep into his career, but she kind of left her career as an artist to raise her young son, who I think in this book is still like a toddler. It is a really gripping exploration of what it means to be a mother, and how it's like, you know, when you lose a lot of sense of yourself because you're trying to do the best for your kid. It's just absolutely delightful and really funny and fun and sweet and lighthearted, but also like kind of scary. So I don't know, I just love a book that has a really complicated dichotomy and like relationships going on, because we also see the tenseness of husband and wife and this sort of like suburban nuclear family situation when you add this extended allegory of like dog, because our main character calls herself like Night Bitch because at night she feels like she becomes a dog, and like it's just so cool. I really like this. My 16th favorite book of the year is Matrix by Lauren Groff. This is a historical fiction kind of magical realism novel following this 17-year-old, very tall, very broad girl who gets cast out of the French like castle. I think this is set in the 1300s, and she gets sent to this like convent up north in France, and it's like absolutely barren, kind of like a wasteland, but she gets into this convent and she works her way up through within the convent system, and we just follow her like life from when she's 17 to when she becomes an old woman, and like all these powerful changes that she makes. It's sapphic. It is really about like female power and manipulation and spirituality, because obviously like Catholicism plays a huge role in this story, and the relationship between like the monarchy and the church and the tenseness there, and then also like the peasantry and its relationship to the church and the convent, and the way that our main character kind of like moves through the ranks and gets so much power. And it's this community of all women who like end up getting so much control in their community in a way that throughout history like we don't really see that much, or at least that narrative isn't really presented in that way. So I thought this was beautiful and expansive and honestly kind of funny. It felt so like real. It felt like being in a period piece. It felt like being in a really fast-paced like time-spanning movie, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that the complicated relationships and dynamics within the convent as well as on a political level were amazing, but I think that the most wonderful aspect of this book is how brutal and ruthless a leader our main character is. I just loved it. She is a girl boss. She is a 14th century girl boss, and I love that for her. My 15th favorite book of the year is one that I physically own, and that is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is a high fantasy following a bunch of different characters, both princesses. One is the younger sibling, one is the older, and there is a discussion of war between like an upper kingdom and a lower kingdom. These different kingdoms have like really different customs. We're also following another perspective, which is one of the gods of the kingdoms. Basically, this princess gets like sent off to go marry the god king, of this other kingdom to like prevent war or whatever. But the princess who gets sent off isn't the one who was initially planned to get sent off, so she wasn't like prepared her whole life to become the princess. Like, she's just like a girl. And so she's like really out of her depth there. This book kind of explores what it means to be like a god or a princess, or like these things within this really, really beautifully constructed world. Brandon Sanderson is a genius at world building and creating systems of magic. Like, that man's mind is absolutely insane, and this book just does it in a fantastic way. The magic in here has to do with like color and light and movement and the ability to harness it, and there's just so many different perspectives at play here that they all like interweave with each other. Obviously they all meet at certain points, and it's just so compelling and fast-paced and wonderful. I loved this a lot. So my 14th favorite book of the year is The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbary. This book is a literary fiction novel that was translated from French, and like it's pretty famous. I think a lot of people have read this book. It was probably published in like the 90s or something. I really don't know, but it's basically following these two perspectives. It's the concierge, this elderly woman who works at this really swanky apartment in Paris, and kind of her like scathing observations of all the rich people who live in the building, because she herself is a very precocious, like smart person, but because she's working class, like no one thinks that she is. And then we're following a very precocious 12-year-old who is incredibly intelligent and very observant of her surroundings and really sick of the wealth and privilege. Follows these two characters as they kind of have an interesting relationship and dynamic. Also, a major point of the story that kind of the book starts off with is that the 12-year-old girl like wants to commit arson, like burn the building down and then like commit suicide. It's kind of crazy, but the way that this like literary fiction novel explores the tenderness of human relationships while making these like observations about class is so funny. It is heartwarming and beautiful. Kind of reminds me of like Eleanor Oliphant or like Sally Rooney, but like with this in this more it's like playful almost. I loved it. I really loved this book. Number 13 on my list is the Robin Hood series by Carrie Vaughn. These are 2 novellas so far. I think there might be more coming. I swear to God, like I'm praying. I hope there's more books in this series, because we're kind of following the heirs of Locksley, and we are seeing the 3 kids of Robin Hood and Marianne. And these 3 kids, there's the oldest daughter, there's a middle brother, and then a baby sister, and the baby sister is mute, and the brother is like rowdy and whatever, and then the older sister is very like serious, and she's also a fantastic archer. In these books, we kind of follow them throughout their like teenagehood, childhood, and then also like when they get a bit older, and it's just so delightful. Like, it's such a delightful sort of play on what it means to live in the shadow of a legacy that your parents they don't seem like real. It's like they're just your parents. And then also like that ye olden times like Robin Hood setting is just so wonderful. Like, I really, really enjoyed this. It was just such a delight to read, and I really hope to see more from this series. I just love it. I love a retelling, and I think this did it really well. Number 12 on my list is Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon Ha Lee. I think this is a young adult fantasy, and it's sapphic, and it's following these characters as they work for the Empire, and the Empire is absolutely brutal. Our main character is this girl who's like just like trying to scrape together to get by, and she's living with her older sister, but then she gets kicked out. She's a really talented painter, and she tried to try out for like the academy, but the academy like rejects her, I'm pretty sure, at the beginning of the book. But then her sister is like, why did you even try out for the academy? Like, we hate the institution that it stands for. And the younger sister, the main character, is like, no, but like we need to survive, we need to eat, and I wanted to bring home more money for the family because like I feel like, I want to do something. And so, but then we follow her as she gets recruited to work inside the for the emperor, for their war department, and there's like a magic thing going on. There's this, it's just so awesome and amazing, and I loved it. I think that it does explore the nature of rebellion, of empire, repression, war, but also art, and just visualize and feel the setup of this world so viscerally, like her being in this castle, not really trying to navigate how to do her work, and like, it's just so cool. I loved it so much, and yeah, I just think it's really underrated too, so go check it out if that seems interesting to you. Now, number 11 on this list is a thriller mystery. I think this is the only thriller mystery on my list because I have pretty high standards, I feel, and they always have to be like something kind of playful and fun, the way that last year one of my favorite thriller mysteries was Fortune Favors the Dead. But this year, it's Finlay Donovan is Killing It by El Cosimano. This book was just a fucking delight because our main character is a suspense romance author, single mom, and she's recently like gotten a divorce, and her husband is a piece of shit, and her husband is now her landlord, and she just like is in desperate need of some money. So one day she's like meeting with her literary agent and at like a Panera. I'm from St. Louis, so we call it Bread Co. This woman overhears them talking about the plot of the book, and obviously like it's like a thriller, or like it's like a suspense like mystery. So the woman then offers our main character, this like frazzled single mom, to kill her husband, and if she kills her husband, this like random stranger woman at the Panera Bread will like give her 50 grand. So she's like, well, should I do it? And then we follow the course of the story as, you know, things play out. It's so funny and so fast-paced and so just fun. It's just pure fun, but it's also murder. So and I just love it a lot, and yeah, that's why it is number 11 on my list. Number 10 on my list of top favorites of this year is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Okay, so Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing has like gotten better. It's gotten better, okay? In Malibu Rising, we're following these kids of like this giant star named Mick Riva, whom, if you read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, same guy. We see the relationship and the struggles of this family. It's set in like the 70s, the 80s, and their rise to like fame in their own right, and the family dynamics there. It alternates between the past timeline and then like current timeline of the annual party that this supermodel, the older sister of the family. Listen, I love a book where one of the main characters is an older sister who is like very competent and cool and badass, because that's how I am. Well, that's how I hope to be as the oldest sister. So yeah, I just love this. It also explores like lesbianism and coming to terms with that, and then also like there's like a brother rivalry regarding like romance and stuff, and obviously there's the complicated nature of growing up with an alcoholic parent and then having a superstar parent who is not really in your life, and then there's also infidelity and other siblinghood, like because this guy Mick Riva like fucked around, so like there's a bunch of other kids that he doesn't even know about, and like it's crazy, you know, and then like the lives of the rich and powerful, but like how did you even get there? So yeah, it's just the way that Evelyn Hugo is a story about like this rags to riches superstar thing, like we see that here as well, but even more complicated because it's tied in this family dynamic that really compelling for me to read about, and I loved it, and I cried, I laughed, it was fun, okay? Number 9 on this list is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Philyaw. This book is a short story collection, and it follows a bunch of women who are in a Black church, and it's like all of their different perspectives and lives, but each of the stories is formatted in a way that is like slightly different and unique to one another, and all of them are so memorable, and it's very queer. It explores a lot of like feminist themes, and then also the complicated nature of one's relationship to religion and family, and it was just wonderful, and I loved it a lot. Number 8 on this list is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. This is another like Eleanor Oliphant-like book, but I liked it more than that one because it is, It is lesbian, and we're following this atheist lesbian who, in a weird series of events, ends up like working for as a secretary at this Catholic church, but then there's like the murder mystery kind of that almost plays out, but it's all very tender and it explores mental health a lot because our main character is like so depressed, probably autistic, probably has OCD. Like, I don't think there's any explicit diagnoses within the book, but we also see kind of her family dynamic as well, and her younger brother who is an alcoholic, and her parents who refuse to acknowledge that there's any problem. I think that the realism of the story is the way that our main character is so stuck in her head, and how her actions are interpreted in a way that are so different from her intentions, and I think that is something that is really realistic to life. So number 7 on this list is Firebreak by Nicole Corner Stacy. This book, fucking amazing. It's a sci-fi book set in the future where 2 major corporations own all the United States, and they're at a constant war for more land and more resources. And we're following our main character who is a orphan of this war, as is many other people of her generation. One of the jobs that she works is being like a gaming streamer, like a Twitch streamer basically, of the equivalent of this world. And then she gets like roped into some intrigue about what is really going on in this world. It's fantastic. It's a really wonderful look at internet culture, well, kind of, but like set in the future, but also like celebrity culture and like hero worship of public figures, I think, in the creation of public figures, and then also rebellion and what that looks like, and uncovering corrupt systems. And it just, I loved it a lot, okay? And it deserves more hype. Number 6 on this list is All's Well by Mona Awad. I've talked about this so much recently, especially. I loved it. It's about an English professor who experiences extreme chronic pain, and then like the weird magical realism that occurs when she's trying to put on a play, and then called, All's Well That Ends Well by Shakespeare, and some stuff happens. It is so amazing and dark, but also just weird, but a delight. So that's why it is number 6 on my list. Now we're moving into the top 5. Okay, so my 5th favorite book of the year is A Curse of Roses by Diana Pinquicha. In fact, this book was like so impactful on me that I got a tattoo kind of based off of it. It's about this girl, this princess of Portugal, who like every piece of food that she touches turns into flowers. And so like when she touches bread, it turns into roses. Anyway, so I really love this book. It's a young adult fantasy, I think, and it's sapphic, it's magical, obviously. It explores a lot about like religious trauma because it's like Catholic, and our main character's relationship with her faith, and also her like kind-heartedness and the way that she wants to serve her people who are starving. And there's also like a plague going around because it's a ye olden times in Europe, like where everyone's sick and dying. So it was amazing and so compelling. I loved it so much. So yeah. Number 4 on my list of favorites is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a really slim novella set in a future where the robots and mechanical things of the world have been set free, and now everyone lives in this like environmentally beautiful, green, lush world. And sorry for the set change, the camera change. I'm realizing that the previous frame was just kind of weird and a little bit too wide angled, so I'm really sorry about that. I hope this is better. Anyway, a fucking delight. It's set in a future world where robots and humans haven't interacted for a long time, and then we follow a non-binary tea monk who goes into the woods and runs into a robot, and they have interactions for the first time in, like centuries. And it's beautiful. It reminds me of Pet by Kweki Emezi because it's set in this like post-revolutionary world where things are perfect, but are they? But it's not in this like sort of dun 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 kind of way. It's like in a sweet, questioning kind of way about the nature of relationships and tender protection and love. It's so wonderful and I loved it. And my number 3 favorite book of the year Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? I think so many of the conversations within this book remind me of conversations that I have with my friends, and it also reminds me of the complicated nature of relationships, romantic and friendship-wise. And I think a lot of the commentary on the literary world, on the world at large, relationships, the internet, culture, politics, media, like, it was amazing, and I loved it so much. And yeah, 5 stars. Favorite. Number 3 favorite book of the year. And my number 2 favorite book of the year is Princess Floralinda and the 40 Flight Tower by Tamsin Muir. I've read this book like 40 times at this point. It is such a delight. It is, every single time that I read it, I find joy again. I think it is love and light. I love this book. It is sapphic. We're following this princess who has to like battle her way down this tower, and on every single flight there is like a different creature that she has to fight. She's this delicate little princess at the beginning of the story, but by the end of the story she is a badass motherfucker. It's a novella, so just read it. It's so sweet and funny and delightful and amazing. I loved it. And my number 1 favorite book of the year comes to no surprise, I don't think. Ellie Eaton's The Divines. Oh, God. I spoke to the author on my podcast about this book. It's about the queerness of girlhood, memory, and motherhood, and reflecting on what it means to be a woman, a girl, class within Britain, because we're following this alternating perspective of like a 30-year-old woman looking back on her time at boarding school. And at the boarding school, it's like all girls in Britain, they have all these like weird little rituals and stuff that, you know, happens at like private schools like that. And navigating like privilege and love and tense relationships and wanting to leave a part of ourselves in the past, but you can never do that. And I fucking love this book. That's all. And those are all of my top 20 favorite books of the year. And also, if there's like little clinking sounds, it's because I'm wearing these like really sweet earrings. Here, let me show you. I got this necklace last night from one of my besties, Eliza. It's from Topple and Burn, which is I think a UK-based jewelry company, and it says literally a communist. So cute! I love. And this is my Jasper Stone necklace. I think someone I follow on Instagram made it, but yeah. Anyway, that's all I have for you today, and thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that bullshit, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!